Hello, thank you for joining us. You are listening to our video series on peer support specialists. My name is Chrissy.
And I'm Jody.
And we are peer support specialists here in Denver, but we're doing this video series on peer support, Southern style. Jody and I are both from Georgia. We're transplants out here in the great western state of Colorado. Today we're going to talk about intentional peer support.
Yes.
We didn't really make a huge plan about this video, so you may just have to bear with us. But we know that we have good points that we need to make. So first, let's talk about connection. Probably the biggest, most important thing that can happen when you're doing intentional peer support is connection. So we'll both share what maybe an example or what it means to have a good connection with someone, and then we'll go into what some of the things that can cause you to have a disconnect with someone when you're providing intentional peer support. Why don't you go first, Jody? What is it like for you when you have a connection with someone?
The first thing that I realize whenever I'm making a connection with someone is like the clock goes away. It's a very fluid, effortless way to be with someone. So a good connection, you're making good eye contact, you're understanding and listening to the person, and in turn you're being understood and listened to, and it's even. It's not a one-way street. There's equal exchange. So
I would have to agree that even playing field is probably the biggest thing in my own personal strategy when doing peer support, especially if you're working in an environment that's an institution or something that people are staying there for a little while. Maybe they don't know when they're getting out. People can feel really bombarded with staff and feeling like they're beneath other people. Lockdown facilities especially, people feel like they're animals and they're trapped. So in order to make a connection with people, I typically go in with my ears ready to listen to whatever it is they're dealing with, but also breaking down the walls by saying, just so you know, I've been exactly where you've been. I've been behind locked doors. I've been behind plated glass. I have been at a point where I didn't know when I was going to get out of the hospital ever, or if I'd ever have another life. And to me, that just sets the stage for a connection. Now, you're not always going to connect with everybody, and that's just nature of human interaction, I think.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can try, but you just may not mesh. But that doesn't mean that you can't support them in other ways, and it also doesn't mean that you can't refer them to other people. Jody and I work really well together because we have very different styles. Someone that he may connect with, I may try to connect with, and nope, it just doesn't happen. Maybe they don't like me. Maybe I don't like them. And maybe we just can't find a way to find some even ground. So that's why it is important that you get to know other peers in your community and get to know people that are working in the institutions and in organizations, so that way you have some backup if something isn't working for you.
Yeah, that kind of leads well into authenticity. You have to be your authentic self in order to give people a chance to make a connection with you. If you're being fake about it, or if you're putting on a persona or a mask, a lot of times that's a barrier to connection. And it's just very important to pay attention. Pay attention to what that person's saying. I've started to notice that it's like people will almost throw the horrific things out first to see if you're going to stay with them.
Right.
And man, if you make it through that hoop, then you are giving yourself a chance to make the best connection possible.
And that's going to be a future show that we're going to talk about, which is triggers and how to handle different triggers and trauma that people are telling you. But for today, I think we want to move on to, we've just talked about connection. So now let's talk about the disconnects. Jody's going to explain to you, there are a certain amount of disconnects. He's going to tell you a little bit about what they are. And then each of us are going to talk about a specific disconnect and a way to combat that in a positive direction.
I'll start off with the disconnects by saying this, with a question. How do you handle when you observe a disconnect? And what I would say as a peer specialist, it's all about the direct, honest communication. So when we get these disconnects and you sense them, it's good to just, be upfront and say, I realize that we may have lost connection with each other just now. And it gets that person thinking, okay, they really want to connect with me. Let's get back on track. And a lot of times it works. I mean, you'll be surprised.
That's tough to do.
It is. It's tough. It's like, you don't want to admit there's been a disconnect, but there
By the way,
has.
I'm a failure. But can we continue?
I am totally disconnected from you right now. And
Let's reconnect, Jody.
connection made. So, but yeah, I'll start us off with one that I have. It was like one of my first peer specialist experiences when I was like, whoa, I've really got some things to learn. It came on a warm line call, and it was this guy that regularly called in, and everything that he was saying, I was like, yeah, yeah. And finally, he was like, "Is that what they teach you in peer specialist training to say yes?" And I was like, "So
wow, you got busted."
I got busted big time. Like he was tired of hearing yes, and so that'll be our first disconnect. Agreeing too much.
Yeah.
It's.
I agree.
Do you agree with that?
I agree.
Okay, then we've hit our first disconnect with each other. So yeah, but that's kind of the one. I think it goes back to authenticity. If there was a quote that this person has on their email, and if you're all in agreement, then no one is then somebody's not thinking. So, that's one of the most important to me, is to not over agree.
So positive to combat that, and this is just my own personal opinion. When I get to a point where I just feel like I'm going, yeah, yeah, I always, instead of just agreeing, I take the initiative to say, okay, what you're telling me is this. And so I try to ask them, am I hearing what you're saying right? And sometimes I'm not hearing what they're saying right, so thank goodness I didn't agree. I probably did disagree with them or something. But it just breaks up kind of the monotony of just talk, agree. It's, okay, well, this is what I hear you saying. Is that what it really is? And then formulate a question to ask them from them. Be the initiator to keep the conversation moving or to take it into a different direction. Yeah,
and, I'm an INFJ on the Myers-Briggs personality test, and the style that I have is peacemaker, and I've always been a peacemaker. So, yeah. So this, this is a huge growth opportunity for me. It's risking that. Okay, are you still gonna like me if I disagree with you?
Right.
And, the harsh reality is, some people don't like to be disagreed with. So, but it got the running theme of this one for me, authenticity. Right. Are you going to be a yes man, or are you going to be truly genuine in who you are and risk that disagreement? I think, but I have to believe that all things are, you can repair it.
Yeah.
I don't think you're going to just totally disagree with somebody in every single aspect. So, it makes you work a little harder. Okay, now that I've had this disagreement and it's, the disagreement is the disconnect, how am I going to work with that person to find a common ground so that we can reconnect? So then we'll move on to the one that I wanted to talk about, is what I probably struggle with the most. One of the disconnects is telling people what they should do or need to do. I'm going to tell you, this is the hardest thing for me as a peer support, because you're listening to people and they're just screaming for you to say, what should I do? Mm-hmm. We're not the experts at all. We don't have the soundest advice sometimes, and our experience is not like these people's. So who cares what we should do? They don't, and it doesn't matter. You can tell them what they should do anyway. They're not going to do it. It's true. They don't care. They just want you to say I'm doing the right thing. That's because that's what I want usually.
right?
Yeah.
You're not seeking advice, you're seeking approval. So this is the toughest thing for people who are in the position of peer support, is to remember this person is not you. This person doesn't want to know what you would really want to do. But we have a tendency as peers to be empathetic and to want to save people and help them. Rule number 1, you're not going to save anybody. Rule number 1, right?
That's right.
So
I agree.
I have caught myself so many times and have probably just done it on accident, walk away from the conversation going, dang it. Because you always just want to say, you know what I would do, or you know what you should do. So to combat that on more of a positive note, if I feel like the conversation is going nowhere because someone is what should I do? What should I do? What should I do? I try to segue the conversation into, are you open to hear some feedback from me? That way it prefaces the conversation not as, I'm the expert, this is what I would do and this is what you should do. What it is I'm listening to everything that you're saying and I'm going to process it and I'm just going to tell you how I feel about it, not what you should do. Because again, they don't care what you should do because they're probably not even going to take that advice. So that's just one positive feedback that I would suggest. Jody, do you have any others?
Well, my thing is I believe that everybody has inner wisdom. And, it's been my nature in the past to just tell me what to do, make it easy for me. If it's easy, then I'll do it. And that'll just be what I should do. But if you ask open-ended questions, like you were saying, I think that questioning as a peer specialist is one of the most important things you can do. And I love it when I don't have any assumptions. Like I don't already have it in my mind what they should do, but I come up with a good question. Mm-hmm. And they answer that question in a way that tells them what you should do.
Right.
And, it's a lot of times, I'll think about it, this is what I think they should do. I'm going to ask this open-ended question to see if I can get them to say exactly what I want them to say.
And then you're like, bingo!
And then they come up with something better, and it's like, wow, I didn't even think about that. But because of the question, it came out.
And so one of the things to keep in mind and why this is so important is, again, we aren't the experts and we don't have liability insurance. So you can't be telling people what they should and shouldn't be doing. Because if they're taking your advice and going out and bad things happen and they say, well, that peer support specialist, Chrissie, just said that I should have done that.
Don't try this at home.
I mean, there's some liability issues there, number 1. And number 2, I would go insane, if that's probably not the most appropriate word to use here, but I would not feel good if I knew that my advice led someone down the wrong path. Mm-hmm. And so that's why it's just really important to remember, if you want to become a peer support specialist, remember this is not about you. This isn't about what you want, you should do, or you need to do. This is about listening and help, just like Jody said, people come up with their own creative strategies of working toward recovery.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely tools, but the beautiful thing about peer support is you probably shouldn't be telling them the tools unless you use them yourself. Mm-hmm. So, one that I always use is catch it, check it, change it. You can offer them a wellness tool, and the beauty of it is you can go, this is how I've used it. So that lived experience, that is something that is so special and mm-hmm. unique to peer support. Mm-hmm. You get to walk alongside that person, and if that tool works for them, that's great. If it didn't, you just shared a tool that worked for you. So, man, that makes all the difference.
I think we just came up with our next video, which would be wellness tools, including catch it, check it, change it. I'm sorry, I can't say that 5 times fast. Because Jody didn't explain what it was, and I was like, please don't explain it, so you can look forward to next week.
Yeah.
I think that's it for us today. But again, we're just talking about some of the important things that go with intentional peer support. ways to have connection with people, and we're going to keep talking about the things that we stumble upon every day in peer support that makes us disconnect and that we have to keep in mind not to do. Any final thoughts?
Just looking forward to the next episode.
Yep. And thank you so much for all of your feedback. This is so much fun. We're having a blast. I mean, this is both of our passions, and like Jody said, I mean, your lived experience is the best possible tool that you can have. And I think we may have mentioned this earlier. I've never had a job before where in the interview, the more screwed up you can look, the more likely you're going to get hired.
She was really screwed up. Let's hire her.
Jody's like, she's the one.
This is the most screwed up person I've interviewed. Let's go with her.
Thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate all of your feedback, and please share this with people that need to hear it. This isn't only just for peer support either. It's everyday listening and building relationships. That basically is what peer support is all about. So thanks again. Hope you have a great week, and we look forward to seeing you next week.
Sounds good.
Bye.